Hi, this is Dr. Toby Moma, host of Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby, inviting you to watch our show this week with Dr. Troy and Farah Newman. Dr. Troy is a glaucoma specialist, board certified ophthalmologist, and his wife is a comprehensive ophthalmology specialist. And they're both working in Jackson, Mississippi, and they'll be sharing with you their life story. It includes a 2-year trip to Kenya as missionaries at Tinwek Hospital. They'll share with you how they've been able to raise 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. They've been married 13 years, and how they're pursuing their careers in their mid-40s in Jackson, Mississippi with a strong Christian foundation. They'll share with you their life stories, what they've gone through, how they've overcome them, and they'll give us a few snippets into what ophthalmology and what you need to be aware of concerning your eyes. You don't want to miss this show coming up with Dr. Troy and Farah Newman. We're going to be talking about your eyes. We're going to be sharing what God has done through them. You will be blessed. God bless you. Hi, this is Dr. Toby, host of Health and Wellness. It's a pleasure to have you on my show. Don't touch that dial. We have a great program for you today. Dr. and Dr. Mrs. Newman, Troy and Farah, you're welcome on our show.
Thank you.
Parents of 4 lovely children, married, I think 12 years or so. How many years? 13?
13.
13 years, I'm sorry.
13.
And ophthalmologists, both of them, and live in Jackson, and they just came back from a mission trip for 2 years in Kenya, Africa, East Africa, and they were sharing in the last episode their experience, and it's been so inspiring. I just wanted to let them continue. Tell us, how does somebody who's traveling on a mission trip prepare financially? I know this is a broad question, but you have to be a good steward of God's money, right? So what do you suggest to people? Do you just travel with nothing, or do you put your house on rent lockdown? Do you put your cars in storage? I mean, how do you prepare for a 2-year non-existent, you're not living in the United States? How do you prepare for that?
Well, I think it depends on the term that you're going. If it's truly a short-term trip, of course, then you just prepare accordingly. But for us, we didn't really know exactly how long we would be there when we went. Initially, we knew we would be there for at least a year, but we just felt, for us personally, that we just felt the Lord calling us to undo most of our ties so that we wouldn't feel restricted in our ability to stay longer.
So did you sell your house or
we
cars?
did. We sold our house. We sold a car. We kept one with Farah's mom just so that we'd have something when we came back to get around in. We sold boat and just lots of furniture. We sold a lot of things. We just felt like, for us at least, that at that time we were saying yes to God, and we didn't want to limit our time based on things that we had to get back and take care of. And but if you know you're going for a long term, I think it's wise to disentangle yourself from as many financial burdens as you could have back here.
Because you have health insurance there, right?
No.
You have life insurance.
Well, it just depends. Everybody's, it depends on an organization. I mean, those things can be available through an organization. We were a little non-traditional in the way we went. We had been in practice for a number of years, and we decided to go, and we felt like we needed to. We were going to go relatively quickly.
Right.
We had some resources of our own. Many people starting out in missions may not have that available and need to do more support raising on the front end. Really, it does require a certain amount. There's a budget, and you should know before you go about what your budget is, and so that's something that an organization would help you with if you were involved
And
in
if
a
I could
longer-term
speak into
mission.
financially,
Yeah.
this is just something that we've learned a lot by being missionaries and being on the field, that we didn't fully understand. So, the common people definitely don't understand. But and it's a very difficult, humbling thing as a physician. But as a medical missionary, as a physician missionary, you are doing your services as a service. So you're doing those for free. But you do have expenses to live on the field, as you do to live anywhere in the world. And so that's a common misconception amongst people that, well, surely they pay the doctors, that go to mission hospitals. But that's not the case in most scenarios. And so it's just been something that God has totally taught us so much and has humbled us so much in, and showed us his kingdom picture that he calls goers and he calls senders.
Wow.
And that it requires both. It truly requires both. And both are equally important, and both have equal significance to the kingdom. And so your missionaries that you know of in your church or in your community, or if you hear medical missionary, you're stepping into their world and their circle of life, or even supporting them, is absolutely necessary. And we have felt like, without a doubt, that God literally does it. It is a faith journey for sure, but that just as God would call on our hearts to sell what we had, to put it into our missionary account so that we could support ourselves for as long as we could do it, that God also moves in hearts to hear stories, to know what God's doing in other places of the world, and step into that story with that missionary and be the one that he's called out to send them and to allow them to be there.
Just a big question for the medical people watching. How do they know, how will my license expire if I don't practice, if I don't do CME, if I don't train in the U.S. for a year or two? Am I going to lose my medical nursing, physical therapy license? How do you
Big
guys,
question.
you were out for 2 years, so what was you came back and you still are practicing, so that must be a good outcome.
It's a good sign.
Yeah. I think it's wise to think about those things beforehand. I mean, we were able to maintain our medical licensure. We were able to maintain a relationship with even our medical malpractice company. You just have to have those, maybe some conversations on the front end, just to make sure that you're covering those bases. Certainly you want to keep your licensure current. And keep track of cases, and just have a record of what you're doing, so that you can present that to credentialing bodies when you come back. I mean, there is a process. Some of it is kind of nitty gritty, in the weeds things, but you do have to show that you've been practicing medicine in such a way. I mean, that's important.
Because in America, if you don't renew your license, it's very difficult to get it back.
Yeah, certainly.
So it's important to always renew it.
We kept that.
Current,
keep your board certification up.
Okay.
And whatever you are in your time frame of your board certification, make sure you're meeting all your logistics. We came back for CME. We came back in that first year in 2017 to get CME for so we wouldn't go 2 years, and talk to your malpractice insurance company, see what options that they have, and then talk to other medical missionaries, as to avenues that you can do to keep yourself protected, because you do, like Troy said, need to be wise in that. And we have seen and learned that it does differ some from specialty to specialty of type of physician you are.
Yeah.
So what cases, you talked about logging your cases. Give us an idea. If I was to look through your log of cases from Kenya, what would I see? Will I see cataracts? Will I see iridectomy? Will I see...
You'd see a lot of different things. The majority of the cases, the vast majority of the numbers, would be cataract surgeries, just because that's probably the most common ophthalmological surgery that needs to be done. for me, I'm a glaucoma specialist, so I did a fair amount of glaucoma surgery. Ben Roberts, that we mentioned in the previous episode, he's a retina specialist. He does some retina surgery. Farrah has done a number of cataract surgeries and various other procedures, repairs of injuries.
So what did you do for the traumas?
Well, in the case of a ruptured globe, as we call it, the eyeball itself, primarily the injury has to be closed, and so we have to suture the eyeball closed to stabilize it, and then from there, depending on the extent of the injury, there may be other surgeries required once the initial.
Having worked in Africa, I know they have this. It's kind of trauma, but it's anterior chamber hemorrhage. They have a lot of times. I used to see that when I was there, hemorrhage into the anterior chamber, secondary to fighting or something. I don't know if you saw that. Not so much.
It's called a hyphema.
Yeah, hyphema, blood in the front of the eye or in the front and back of the eye. It can happen from injury.
Okay.
So, severe diabetes with proliferative retinopathy, people can develop hyphema from that. Those are probably the most.
Did they just shut the eye for that too, or they had to? What did you do for that?
Well, you have to address the underlying cause if there is one. If it's just injury, then often the blood will clear on its own over time. But if not, it has to be washed out and make an incision and clear out the blood. Often there's problems with the pressure in the eye when there's a hyphema, when there's blood in the eye. Just have to kind of address the issues of the pressure and whether the blood is resolving or not. It has to be.
The greatest difference we saw in surgical, just speaking on, what do we see, what do we do there, what do we see, what do we do here. The biggest difference that we see is the extent of disease. Yeah. So yes, we do cataracts here. Yes, our main thing that we can restore sight and is needed to be done there is cataracts. But there is a huge difference on time of presentation. And so, therefore, there's also a huge difference on the receiving of sight. Right. So when you see an African, in full tribal gear, wearing, their full tribal, and they're rejoicing and they're dancing. I mean, these people have not seen. They're literally blind from their cataracts many times in both eyes, and they've had literally no hope of access to care.
And you just took out the lens?
And
is that what you did?
You just take out the lens, which we do a gazillion times here.
Clear lens.
And you put a new lens.
Clear lens in. And so these people literally go from blindness to sight.
Wow.
In
2-3 hours.
In the moment of a surgery.
Wow.
And so, it's just a remarkable experience for God to have trained us to be ophthalmologists, to physically restore sight, but to be in a place where this is their chance to see again. But yet you come as a Christian, and so you bring Jesus into that room, and so you're bringing physical sight and healing, which is life-changing. But then you're also bringing the Holy Spirit into that room, and you're bringing prayer, and you're bringing your story of Jesus in you into that room. As they look at you and say, why did you come? Why are you here? Why would you be here to do this for me?
It leaves memories for you.
And so then you can, you share the spiritual side of sight.
Give us an idea. A young man watching wants to be an ophthalmologist. Tell him in a few words, how did you become an ophthalmologist? What did you take? Undergrad, grad, post-medical training, fellowship. So, there are many people watching who said, I want to do what she did. I want to take out that cataract. I want to help that man see. So how can they do that?
The usual process for training for an ophthalmologist is generally a 4-year undergraduate degree in some science curriculum usually.
You went to LSU.
I went to LSU.
And you went to
Mississippi State.
Ole Miss.
Mississippi State.
You went to Starkville. Oh, okay. Good. All right. So go ahead.
So you apply to medical school, and then if you're accepted to medical school, then it's 4 years of medical school, and then the residency is a 4-year training period. And then if you are to do a fellowship beyond that. Most ophthalmology fellowships are either 1 or 2 years, depending.
What made both of you go? I don't know if you met before you went into residency, but what made both of you go into ophthalmology? Were you in the same class?
We were not. We
Okay.
were not. I had decided to do ophthalmology. I was at LSU, and I came to Jackson to University of Mississippi to do my residency, and I met Farah while I was an intern in medicine, internal
wow.
medicine, and
She was a medical student.
I was a
She was
third
a
year medical
third year
student.
medical
Oh wow, okay.
So we were 2 years apart in training, but she was already in the process of narrowing things down, and ophthalmology was right there near the top of her list of choices, and she just
Yeah, I was in
decided.
between ophthalmology and ENT, just because of the type of surgeries that I enjoyed, and just the continuity of care that comes along with ophthalmology. That yes, we do surgery, but then we also have a lot of clinic patients that we just get to love on and just be our patients forever. Was maybe leaning towards that decision for me, and so when I applied to ophthalmology residency, when I would be a first year, he would be a third year, and so we did end up, by God's grace, to be in the same program at UMC, just 2 years apart in training, and so we did train together for 2 of our 4 years.
When did
And
the wedding bells ring?
into my 4th
Oh, really?
year of medical school before starting
So
residency.
you knew each other for 5 years or 6 years?
No,
no.
Second, third year?
I met him. Yeah, I met him in my beginning of my 3rd year of medical school, and we married at the end of my 4th year of medical school.
Oh, medical school. I thought you
Yes.
said residency.
So
oh,
when we were
wow.
residents together, we were husband and wife.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in fact, my surgical training begins in your 2nd year of residency, and he was a 4th year at that time, and so some of my very first surgical procedures to do,
He was
I was scrubbed in with him, and he was my teacher.
Okay.
So very fascinating, right?
Interesting. That is awesome. So you guys met in the hospital, obviously,
Yes.
and you sounds like you dated for 1 year because you got married in her 4th year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a
About a
quick.
year and a half.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you just met her, and next thing you know, you proposed, and next thing you know, you guys are getting married. I'm just asking because
Yeah.
I work in UMC. I know how tricky that can be.
So we
Yeah.
met sometime around maybe probably July, August of 2003. And then in the fall of 2004, we were engaged.
Oh, wow.
And then
That's a
in
year.
May of 2005, we were married.
Wow.
So-
Wow.
And God
was
just had his hand
almost
over
2
all
years.
of that. I mean, honestly, like
Yeah.
there's just so much God
Yeah.
in that whole story that we're not sharing. But, for Troy to even have landed at UMC versus staying back in New Orleans, which is where he was very used to and comfortable with, is a miracle of God. All the way into Troy's salvation and coming to know Jesus in our first 6 months of
Oh,
me
he
knowing
wasn't a
him.
Christian
He
when
was
you
not
met
a
him?
Christian.
Oh, my
He's not a
goodness.
Christian. I mean, there's so much God story in
Next
there.
episode, right?
There's so much. I mean, that's a huge part. So salvation came for Troy in that December of 2003, and then our residencies matching together in the
Wow.
same program. I mean, that's
Takes a lot of.
just a miracle. Yeah, for sure.
And I know it's not a big deal here, but is it common to marry across state lines? In Nigeria, where I'm from, if they tell you you're married from another ethnic group or another state, your parents are like about to fight over it. They're like, "Don't you have any girls in our little town that you're going across the town?" So was that an issue in your family? He's from New Orleans, am I correct?
Yes.
Or South
Yeah.
Louisiana, and you're from up north, maybe
North Mississippi,
Yeah.
Columbus. Mhm.
Was that ever an issue in the family? Was that ever brought up
No.
as a?
No, the only it is a little different culturally, but
Okay.
it's not so much.
Okay.
But just my coming to Mississippi, from just growing up in South Louisiana, and then meeting my wife, and we ended up, of course, staying in Mississippi, practicing and working after training. I think people would say, just be careful when you go to Mississippi because you might meet your wife and you might not come you might not come back. So.
But tell us why you moved, why you came to Jackson. Was it just the match, or was it you wanted a different environment other than New Orleans?
Yeah,
because undergrad was Baton Rouge, right?
Yeah, right.
And
Correct.
medical school was New Orleans. Okay.
Yep.
Normal people will have just stayed in New Orleans for
That's right.
residency.
Right.
So there must have been something that pushed you to Jackson.
Yeah. You know, at the time, you know, I grew up in a Catholic tradition in South Louisiana.
Really? You've
I
done
was
a whole lot
honestly,
on
I
that.
was just kind of, you know, living basically a secular lifestyle, kind of a nominal Catholic. I mean, I just I really didn't know the Lord. If you'd asked me if I were a Christian, I would have said yes, but didn't probably really know what that meant. But I did feel the Lord. I mean, I didn't know at the time, but I just felt this pull away from the culture there, the group that I was just with, just even my friends that I really do care for. But I just felt like I was being drawn away
To
from
another
there.
place, right.
And now looking back, you know, really with spiritual 2020 hindsight, I really do believe the Lord was pulling me to a different place and calling me to something different.
Amazing. Yeah, God is great. That's it takes a lot of, like I said, there were, so when you guys met, technically there were even, let me use the word denominational barriers, because then he was Catholic, right? And you were the other side, Protestant or evangelical.
Yeah. So there, when I first just knew who he was, there was definitely a spiritual, difference between us for sure. I remember a friend telling me later that she, asked Troy early on, and are you saved? And Troy was half confused and half offended because he was like, what do I need to be saved from? Like, literally, am I having a car wreck I don't know about? So, and my friend shared that with me later. But, as we met, and it wasn't necessarily like we were focused on dating at that time, the first thing that comes into my realm of life was, do you want to go to church with me? And so from the very beginning, in that first month that I even knew who he was, not even knowing his full God story, was church. And then it's just the revelation of the Holy Spirit in someone's life.
Wow.
I just got to witness it with my own eyes from August till December of that year, as God just totally brought him into knowledge of himself. And put people around him, put books in front of him, put the Word in front of him, and so by the time we were dating, we were equally yoked, which is certainly important now, having living married 13 years, mission field or no mission field, is definitely the most crucial thing for our marriage, is that we have the grounding of Jesus.
Is it boring having two ophthalmologists in the same house? I'm just asking, because people say if you have two doctors it's boring, but two ophthalmologists, that's a pretty narrow focus.
Yeah.
We really feel like by and large it's been a huge blessing for us. I mean, medicine is its own language, but ophthalmology is really its own language. And so just being able to understand each other in that realm, being able to support each other, practically speaking, we've covered each other, in practice and even at Tenwick Hospital, where one of us may not be able to be up there, but the other one can. And so that was really, it's been beautiful for us, I think, just being able to.
Some people say it's not, let me use the word, it's not worth it to have your wife at work and then at home. Have you heard those people? They say you shouldn't merge the two, that keep home and keep her work separate. That if you work with your wife, you may get into other arguments. They use the word argument. I don't really know what they mean, but so have you experienced anything working together with Farah or Troy? Have you experienced any negatives working together? I mean, you know, he supervised you and you didn't like his evaluation or something.
Well, I'll tell you, honestly, and I'm not seeking that just because I'm on a TV show, but truly, I really have had, there's been so much benefit and so much just good things for me that I really can't speak into to negativity. For example, if I'm in the operating room at Tenwick Hospital where there's something that's over my head or all of our heads, there's no one I would rather have there than him. You know, to be in that surgery case with me, helping, you know, make decisions and guiding me. Maybe that goes back to our original training, and he was, you know, my upper level teaching me my first suture. I don't know. And also, just as a part-time female physician, it has been an incredible help to me, having him in the same, you know, field as me. And you know, just conversation when we're heavy about a patient or heavy about what's happening or the outcome or the diagnosis. You know, we may take it for granted sometimes that we can just jump right into that conversation and completely understand what we're saying in the lingo and just be in that together. You know, as far as like caring for the patient and praying for that patient.
There's so many things that we don't have to explain to each other.
Okay.
that we can just share with each other. So it's nice.
And the kids, obviously, they've probably been brought into the ophthalmological world as well, right? Because having seen all this around them, I won't be surprised if they
Especially
end
at
up in
Tenwick.
that.
Yeah.
Any of them looking at medicine, I'm sure they're going to look at it in the future, but they're still in high school right now.
Now they're 7th grade,
Oh, they're
4th
still-
grade,
Okay.
1st grade, and then the baby is 3.
So they're just getting
Yeah,
out of middle school. Maybe.
kind of entering
Yeah,
middle school more
entering
than
middle
anything.
school. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You guys have been a real testimony. It's an awesome. Now, last question I want to ask is, when did you meet Jesus, Farah? I mean, you told me he met Jesus after both of you started talking, 2003. What was
Yeah.
your faith walk like?
So my God story, you know, is quite different than Troy's. Troy was 31 when that story was taking place, and so thank you, Jesus, for His revelation. So my story started very differently. Mine really starts from my childhood. I was raised by just a mom, as I mentioned. My father wasn't present in my life in any realm of my growing up. And I do think that was significant, looking back. But when I was 13-ish, I was living in a small, rural little neighborhood community outside of Columbus, Mississippi.
I'm going to have to cut you off
Yeah.
because we're going to cut off.
Oh, sorry.
When we come back, Farah is going to finish her story on her faith walk and her background and her upbringing. I think it's a fascinating story. A successful wife, mother, ophthalmologist, telling us exactly the circumstances behind the success that God has engineered in her life. You don't want to miss it. Farah and Troy Newman will be back next week. Don't forget, Jesus is Lord. God bless you.
Sorry.